Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's Feb19, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank the New York Finnegan's Wake Reading Club for introducing me to Ethan M. Grossman, better known as Colin. Where in the heck are you calling in from, Colin?
Burlington, Mass, just north of Boston.
Oh, how cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
I'm just gonna say Cameron Bay.
Say
like nourishment, cheese.
oh, cheese, Camembert. You mean the type of cheese?
Yeah. And you know, my head's been skipping like a record because I just had an experience where somebody told me how Cameron Bay like brought a whole nation together.
How cool is that?
I think it's cool, dude.
Yeah, one of my favorite answers ever, I've been asking it for 40 years, was an old lefty in Berkeley said pizza. And then a year later, a 12-year-old kid said pizza. So that was the whole span right there. You had all ages agreeing. So that's what is pizza? Cheese on bread with a little ketchup. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
All right, dude. I got a little story for this, okay?
Please, we welcome stories, anecdotes, and
okay,
tangents.
I'll try not to be too long, but this one has to do with you. And basically, the short answer is my favorite information is something that gives me like an epiphany, like this feeling of wow, you know. So this is my story because I read this essay by somebody named Ann Boyer, and it was called Shotgun Willie. So, and it was basically at a time in her life she was kind of down and out, and she bought a Willie Nelson record, Shotgun Willie, at the Goodwill store for a dime, right? And she kind of, her essay, she goes through each of the songs and talks about her life, and she puts forth this idea that it's like she only listened to side A. You know what I mean? Like I could relate to that back in the days when you had albums. Like you just kind of kept playing the side A. And then fast forward in her life when everything got kind of normalized, she kind of referred to that as the side B of her life, right? And almost like the idea that you can't have one without the other, right? So there's the epiphany. Now, with you, I had a double epiphany. It's kind of like a double rainbow because at one point in my life, when I had a record player, I had that Zap album, Hot Rats, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, it wasn't like my favorite album. You know, I'm not like, oh, I love that album, but it was where like I would play side A, right? And it was, I remember that one thing, you know, you know, like I grooved to that. And I remember even once I called a radio station to ask them to play it. But I listening to you and how I'm fascinated how you had that job, you said, I think, where you were the dude who like picked up the phone when people were like, hey, I'm listening to Zappa, like, am I okay? You know?
I was a Zappa. I worked for Zappa selling merchandise, but I was basically a Zappa fan shrink.
Yeah.
Am I okay? That's Willie the Pimp you were referring to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the epiphany?
Well, so the epiphany is when you read something and you're like, it was kind of like life. It was like there's a side A to life and a side B to life.
Yeah.
And they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that side A is kind of like maybe all the good tunes, the best tunes are on the side A, you know, and you really groove to it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my, like reading that, I thought, wow, that's a really cool essay. I could relate to it. And
yeah.
I went down like a Willie Nelson wormhole, like there's a whole story about Shotgun Willie, and read his autobiography, and it's all pretty cool.
No, he's got great sons. We know his sons. They're Neil Young's backup band.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, what year were you born?
1970.
1970. So, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Just to like make sense of experience.
Yeah. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think that it's innate, but it can become inventive.
Yeah.
I apologize. You hear that? Hopefully the dogs aren't too.
No, dude, it's all right. I can hear you loud and clear. Colin, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
kind of like just mull it over, meditate on it.
Yeah. Can humans think without language?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Can humans think without language? Well, the follow-up to that really is this is Chomsky saying language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Yeah, it's I don't like the feeling, right? I don't like the feeling when language breaks down. It's kind of like a punch in the gut. But I think what I try to do is kind of do a little rewind and figure out where it broke down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You rewind and figure out. Yeah. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think we're more feeling, and yeah. And I'd like to well, a couple things, because I'll do a little rewind. I wanted to say that part of like you helping people with Zappa, for me, a lot of it was James Joyce. James Joyce was like my Frank Zappa, right? I like got really into James Joyce, and just in recent years, like joining a reading group and meeting other people, you're like, wow, this is really cool. There's other people out there, who are into it. But what you just asked about, I think you asked about feeling versus thinking.
Yeah. Are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings? Yeah.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say, and a lot of this gets into the side A, side B thing, right? So you and I talking, we're kind of like we're kind of at that time where it's like, what happens when you flip the record? You're not on either side A or side B. But what I wanted to get at is, because of my experience in engineering and some of your questions about feeling and thinking, is I kind of been playing with the thoughts of comparing it to like natural science. Like, what is feeling? Okay, maybe feeling could be like an energy, right? Like sunlight on your skin, or warmth, or whatever. Whereas thinking could be more like a process, where you take your energy inside you and you apply it. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to touch on. I think at our core, people, we are feeling. I mean, we're feeling people,
But so,
I think
I
we're more
like
feeling.
no, I like what you're saying, because what you talked about is when you're flipping the record between the A and the B, that's what McLuhan called the resonating interval. It's the in-betweenness, you
Wow.
know, and it's
Yeah.
so it's sort of that's how you understand the difference between A and B, because in essence, it's all one album. And in essence, you can't separate feeling from thinking, but we think we can because we invented the words. They're
Mm.
so integrated. So you touched on something we'll get into, like the difference between art and science, saying feelings like sunset, thinking's like the process. Really good, Colin. I appreciate this. So this is two questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. One is thinking a function of the soul.
I think if you take, take the process of thinking, it's a function of everything that's part of us. So
Yeah.
I would say yes, it is. There, yeah, the soul's a function of that.
The second Turing question, can machines think?
Uh I don't really think so. I don't, I don't think so. You
Yeah,
know, just the way I think of machines. I
that's
don't
fine.
know. It comes down to how do you define it? Like, I mean, I think what the big blue, the chess thing, that
Yeah,
the guy that played chess. All right, was that thinking? Somebody could say that was thinking. The guy, the machine thought out a chess game.
yeah.
Can you so all right, so therefore you've just separated the feeling. So can machines think separate of feelings? Sure. Then who
Yeah.
cares? You know.
Yeah, that's good. Who cares? So do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't necessarily last.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm it's kind of funny, Jerry, because I don't know, dude. I'm generally pretty happy. Like I'm one of those people that like people get pissed because you're happy. It's like, why are you happy? Or like, why are you laughing? Or, and I actually had a story. I had a good story about you reminded me because this was an epiphany when I was young. When we were in scouts, we hiked the Sierras. We did like these 50-mile trips. It was awesome, dude. But my buddy and I, we skipped the peak. We were gonna do Whitney, and everybody's like, let's just go home. My buddy and I were like, we came all this way to climb Whitney. What are you guys crazy? And his dad was one of the scoutmasters. He was like, all right, you two guys go ahead. You go do it. And we were like 14 or something, right? So we ended up like getting lost like in the Sierra Nevadas. And I don't know, it was just funny because that was the time where I don't know, something in me was just like goofing around, and my buddy was like, what are you like, this is serious, I don't know, it was a trip.
You mean you didn't take being lost so serious and he was kind of freaking out?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I guess my whole point is like, I'm not saying like, I don't know why, I'm just generally pretty happy. That's
No,
all.
I understand. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. I appreciate anyone who's positive and has humor as a top-notch thing. It's important. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
um I think, it was funny recently. I was thinking about consciousness and like what is it, and i I think what I came across is that maybe consciousness is like a form of open-mindedness, right? Like being conscious isn't just like, yeah, I wake up in the morning and I'm breathing, right? And I think it's more of like I'm conscious, like I'm open-minded, right?
Yeah.
And some of that comes from Joyce, the Joyce quote, because he talks about an uncreated consciousness of his race. And I never really, that always kind of struck me funny because I never thought of Joyce as somebody who, put himself in a race. So I started to think, what exactly was he saying? I thought maybe what he was saying is, this uncreated consciousness, like this group of people I'm hanging out with, they're so close-minded, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just need to like somehow open their minds, like get this consciousness. So to your point, is it bubbling away? I think we have to work a little at it. I think we have to work a little at it.
Yeah. Work at it is really beautiful. Thank you, Colin. So what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I think going back to the energy thing, that light is faster because thought's a process.
Yeah.
I do want to say that when you think of the process that goes in our bodies, and all the juices flowing around and a lot of it being chemical reactions, one thing I read that was interesting was, chemical reactions, when electrons jump states, they send off little sparks, So it kind of made me think like somehow inside of us, there is little sparks going off,
Definitely. So Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague Yvonne Rayner said, oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Yeah, a new tool to dismantle a master's house. Or what type of tool? I mean, it could be new to me, it could be new to you, but it could have been something that was out there before, right?
It's basically what tool do you most gravitate towards? You can apply the word new if you want, and you can apply dismantling the master's house if you want.
Yeah. So I think that to have a tool, like in my field at work, there was sometimes there's conflict, in life, sometimes there's conflict. So you would think of, if there's a master, maybe there is an inherent conflict, there's an inherent tension, or there's a history. I think I heard one of your guests explain that this poet, it was related to the African American experience. Am I correct? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's different things. Like there's an immediate conflict, there's a inherent tension, but then maybe there's a history where, for instance, the statues being torn down in North Carolina or wherever, the Virginia, I think what's important is that for you or us or anybody, if you're going to use a tool, you got to know how to use it, and you got to understand like that it's not going to absorb you. It's not going to take your energy, right?
Oh.
It was like, this is going to sound really corny, but at one point I was in these meetings, and yeah, it was really contentious. A lot of people were getting angry, and I realized I just kind of laid low. And but if you've never seen the movie like Star Wars, like that night laying in bed, I realized, man, I think I learned how to use the force, like
Good.
no, like I'm not trying to get like, but I was like, you could take this energy and absorb it into you, and rechannel it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's tough to do like strategically. It's tough to say purposely like this is what I'm going to do. So now if you're going to create a tool, you want to be able to, you know, first of all, you got to understand the house. You got to understand the structure. Um, yeah, and then just use your energy wisely. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Oh, I really love your words is, take the energy, absorb it, and rechannel it. That was brilliant. So what new toy do you suggest?
Actually, this is one of the things I was thinking about with you. It's almost like this idea of a cyclotron, you
Yeah.
know? It's like say you have, all right, say once again we go back to the thing with the master or some kind of contention. Say you take like a cyclotron or something with rotating magnets, right? That of opposite poles. Like imagine just a huge freaking disc, like
Yeah.
something they use to grind flour or stone.
Yeah.
But then you got two of them. They're like opposite poles. So that's I don't know. I don't know exactly how a cyclotron works, but then in the middle, you have this space that's like a vacuum, right? It's kind of like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's something to do with like flipping the right, whatever, right? But you're like right here, us. You creating this space that's like a vacuum that has minimal friction, minimal waste of energy, and those two forces, like eventually you could, you know, just like they do in those, what are they, when they like split atoms, they accelerate it, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a toy or a tool.
Definitely. Very good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
You want to know what? I mostly like, I think a lot about my family. I
Yeah.
do.
It's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's what's important. So McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. No one better than Joyce. Just, he was broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Colin, I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, one of the short answer is because it's easy. It's
Yeah.
easy to ignore. I mean, that's the short answer. The other thing I wanted to touch on with the broadcasting and take it like a radio tower or back to that thing. When I think of Joyce and I think of his art and I think about Nora and I imagine why they left Ireland, and I mean, and maybe I imagine that it couldn't have been that easy, you know. I mean, just recently I was sharing with a friend about the passage in Portrait where the prefect like just whacks his hand, and he writes it's like a dry crumpled leaf, and he just winced from the pain. And I mean, to be like raised like that, um once again, it's like, all right, thinking of energy, like it's like wine in a spring. I mean, that dude must have been wound. And, then he meets Nora, and there's the feeling, right?
Yeah.
So he's got all this like energy inside him, and you match up like love. I mean, that's like fishing, man. That's like, and then for them to say, that's it, we're out of here. So then you talking about art, and this goes for anybody. If somebody's got that drive inside,
Yeah.
there's just something inside you that you have to get it out. And I think of this when I think of like engineering systems. You have your stored energy, your distribution, and your regulation. And that's what, that Joyce was an author. That was his distribution, his writing, and he just regulated it out. But
Really
why
cool.
do we ignore artists? Because it's easy. It's
Yeah.
it's easier for us to just, somebody tells us what to think and we go, okay, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, that distribution word was really good, Colin. It made your point well. Do artists have moral obligation?
Um, I would say like when I think of like, I mean, does anybody have a moral obligation? I don't, I'd like to think we do. I'd like to think we do. I guess I think of people who maybe experienced so much pain that they just don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
and maybe the obligation is more on all of us,
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't want to see an artist necessarily self-destruct, and they might not understand. I mean, if somebody's like on the precipice of doing something that could be deemed morally, not moral, they might not realize that. They might
Yeah.
not think it's not moral,
Yeah. Yeah, you're touching on a lot of things we're delve into. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I, lately, even ideas that I think are new, I realize they're old. I don't, so I don't think I'm afraid of ideas. Uh, I'm not really afraid of ideas. I'm afraid of bad ideas,
Yeah, there you go. I'm for changing the words too. It's not new or old, it's bad. So can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Dude, yeah, there was one where like I don't know if it's ever happened to anybody of you, but I stuck my head through a railing and like I couldn't get it back. They had to bring out like the Vaseline and stuff. It was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
I think it's a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. Colin, tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
I would say yeah, like you mean like growing up and stuff. Yeah, I would say my father for sure. Yeah.
What'd you mainly get from him?
I think that I think I got he was a wounded vet, and I don't think, I don't know, dude. It's hard for me to say, like, this is just my perception, but I just don't think the experience like ever left him. And I think, but at the same time, he had this like certain compassion for people. Like I think he saw like the fragility of life. So even though he was really rough on the outside, he was really like compassionate. And Yeah, I think what I got from him is just like violence sucks, or it's not a good idea. It's like
That's good. I love it. Violence sucks. Well, that is so well put, dude. You know, the same question outside your immediate family, someone who has
yeah,
effect on you.
yeah. I'll bring up this dude, Rich Galier. He's the guy who helped coach me through Joyce. You know,
He coached you through Joyce. Well, give me something. What did he bestow upon you in regards to Joyce?
so well, basically, I moved to when I moved to Mass. It was in '98, and it was just life changed, and I was got a new job, and I decided to try to read Ulysses again, and he saw it on my desk at work, and this guy Rich was actually, believe it or not, which is kind of cool. I just dawned on me. He was a lot like my dad. Like he was one of these dudes who like wore the same clothes every day. He was just kind of very like matter of fact. He was an engineer. Um, and he just started and he didn't really talk to people. He didn't have a lot of friends. And he wasn't somebody who's like, hey, be my friend, And he just said, oh, you're trying to read Ulysses. I go, yeah, yeah. And he's just got into he was like, well, you got to read Homer, you got to read Dubliners, you got to read Portrait. And I did it all. Like he told me, he goes, yeah, I was raised Jesuit, but and he was older than me. He was my senior. So he's passed away recently actually, but and then like I finished all those, and it was like the timing was just there was an adult education class. I took it on Ulysses. So I took the every week I went. Yeah. And it was a trip. So I mean, I'll finish the story real quick because I was like, oh good, I'm done. Like that was my goal, right? And then he ended up retiring to Oregon. And one day on my doorstep, I get this box, and it was his books on James Joyce. Like,
Nice.
and I started reading them, and I was like, it's that story. Like, once you try to get out, they reel you back in. And some of the stuff I read, it was just like, I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
That is good. Again, I love that when you pass it on.
Yeah, yeah.
Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yeah, I was raised Jewish. Yeah.
Do you pray?
I will pray. I'll pray. Like I think one of the one of the things about prayer is the idea of congregating. So it doesn't have to be like any particular prayer, like a drum circle, right? Like
Yeah.
somebody say, hey, there's going to be a drum circle down at the beach. Like to me, that could be prayer, whatever. You know what I mean? Now, one of the things I've heard say about prayer is that when people don't have the strength themselves, it's like that idea of congregating, the groups helping the people.
Oh no, that's beautiful because that's what a Finnegan's Wake reading club is basically a living organism. It's
Yeah.
community. It's a hootenanny. It's amazing. Clarion call to be together, commonality. So, if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Uh, well, God wouldn't have to say anything. I, you know, uh, Yeah, I mean,
That's fine.
yeah.
I like it. I like it. Colin, do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Yeah, I was actually, yeah, so I think that I don't think it's necessarily the people. I think evil is an energy that does exist.
Yeah.
I think a good example of like maybe an energy that uh, could be the worship of wastefulness. I mean,
Yeah.
none of us are perfect. Like with our, what the way we consume. Some, a lot of people take it really seriously. Like try to limit your footprint on the planet, this and that. But I think to see a tendency where there's almost like a worship of wastefulness,
Yeah.
that's like not a good energy, you know.
Not good.
Yeah.
Very articulate. Appreciate it. So the hidden question really is kind of Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Gregory Bateson says if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So the bottom line is, does punishment work?
Does punishment work? Well, I mean, it can have it can have an effect, for sure. I'm thinking about the times I was punished. Um, I got like the silent treatment. My dad he was like but silence came natural to him. So for him, it probably wasn't a big deal. But yeah, like, so I don't know. Yeah, so punishment. I don't like punishing. I don't like to punish.
Yeah. No, it's not a pleasant thing to do. But let's go into James Joyce, man, because that's how brought us together. He was
Yeah.
the first projectionist at Volta Cinema in Dublin. Basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, we can do both for sure. But yeah, like why do we there's a demand for it. I think that recreating stuff is not necessarily a bad thing. We don't have to. I mean, I have this Shakespeare, like to me, well, this says, Shakespeare, like to me, like when I've listened to some Shakespeare podcasts, I went down some Shakespeare wormholes, and I'm like, that guy's really like getting into some human emotions and feelings.
Yeah,
So I really like that. Like I'm glad he did that.
yeah,
It doesn't mean like, I mean, hopefully we all get to experience love. Is it like Romeo and Juliet? Is it that passion? You know, do we have to recreate it? Do we have to see a movie about it? No, you know, but there's a demand for it. It's kind of cool.
yeah.
Um,
Well, there's an artist who said, making art is making your problems other people's problems. Any
yeah.
comment?
Oh, I also wanted to say what's pretty cool is Joyce brought us together, but I love how you brought up the Wild Man of Wildville, because it was that talk about the whatever, the Borneo, right? The
Yeah,
Wild Man of Borneo.
so people know, put in context, there's a Rob Clampett cartoon called Beanie and Cecil, and Lord Buckley does the voices in this cartoon that you can watch on YouTube,
Yeah.
and I highly recommend it. So yeah, and we were having a lecture on the Wild Man of Borneo in the Joyce group. So go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so you brought up the Bob Clampett cartoon, Wild Man of Wildsville, and I typed in the chat, I'm so hip, I won't even eat a square meal, and that's when you were like, dude, yeah, I don't. That's funny because that goes back to I actually had a buddy in high school, like who was an art major. He actually made me a poster of the Wild Man. It was like
Wow.
spot on. I had that poster for a long time.
Yeah, that's the real deal, man. Lord Buckley's the king of it all. So, a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker.
Whoa, wait, Jerry.
Yeah.
I think I went on a tangent. It might bug me a little. Your last question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
What was
Well, it's basically why do we have to recreate? It's like why do we have to recreate things? You addressed it,
Oh,
and
we touched on that. Okay,
then,
okay, cool.
then I asked you, making art is making your problems other people's problems.
Yeah, that's a good question, dude.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
like that one.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, that reminds me of like, how you have friends. Well, you probably have friends, or I know you have friends, but friends who are like musicians,
Yeah.
right? Like back in the day, I remember hanging out with friends who are like, we're gonna have a band, we're gonna hang out and play music. I was never one of the really people, but it got me thinking, like, why do you create music, or why do you create art? And you don't do it, if you do it just because you want to be famous or just get on stage, like that might not fuel, you might not have the energy to fuel that passion. But if
Yeah.
you have a message, if you have a reason for it, so it doesn't have to be a problem. I mean, it could be, you could be doing art out of compassion, to help people, like,
Oh yeah.
you know.
Well, no, it's a McLuhan line. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. In New Guinea, they don't have a word for music. They just make music, and it's part of their life. So yeah, I think it's what you're touching on is leading into the intention question, because it's like the screenwriting teacher said, great film is when you can clearly not see. No, he says a great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker, of the artist. And then Kubrick says the opposite. He says great art, great film is when you cannot see the intention. What role do you think intention played in Joyce's creative process? Because you've not only read Joyce, you've studied who the guy is, and where he came.
Yeah,
Just your hunch or your guess. What role
yeah,
did intention play in his creative process?
yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that, and I've been thinking about also, now just recently being exposed to Finnegan's Wake. um the thing that's a trip, like for me with Finnegan's Wake, and like, I don't know, tell me if it's right or wrong, but sometimes when I've read it, it's almost like a Ouija board,
Oh yeah.
it's almost like the stuff coming out at me, it's you know what I mean, it's like it's like living or something. It's a trip. So Um,
No, that's accurate. I think it's like I Ching. It's like a mystery ball. What do you call those balls you look
oh, the
into? And
8 ball.
the 8 ball, but it's also, it's a predicting machine. It's all kinds of things like that. So, but do you think what was his intention?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, I think Joyce's intention, it was compassion. I definitely
Oh,
think
that's
that.
good.
I think first off, his intention was compassion towards Nora.
Yeah,
When I read the poetry of chamber music,
yeah,
there's love down by the river.
yeah.
I
That's
you know
beautiful.
yeah,
No, that's
I
beautiful, dude.
picture them like leaving this
Yeah.
place, and it's like, come here, this is where love is, this is where we can be together, you
So
know and like, just lately, this is my interpretation. All right, so if you take Ulysses, um and say Leopold and Molly, Joyce and Nora, on a human level, like matrimonial, right? I'm starting to be really curious, and like, I would never try to nail down the intention of the wake, but I can't help but think about Saint Bridget, and I'm starting to think about, um like, I've read that Joyce was born like right around St. Bridget's Day,
yeah,
and he had a particular connection with her. And I think that her experience has a big part of the Viconian cycle.
yeah,
So that's kind of like that's my anchor, dude. If we're like,
yeah.
if we're paddling out, taking our rowboats out to go fishing, like, that's where I'm throwing my anchor right now. And
I
that's
like
what's keeping me in the Finnegan's Wake.
I
So,
like that, Colin. And Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think Joyce was thinking of his readers when he was writing The Wake?
I don't necessarily, like, I think he was thinking about, um not necessarily the readers, but the people. I think he was thinking about people. So, yeah, I think he was thinking about the readers. Yeah, and it's experimental. You know what I mean? It was experimental. It's like, you look at the artists of the day, and some, like modern art. You look at it, you go, what is that?
Yeah. Well, Ellman says that we're learning to be Joyce's contemporaries. I'm curious your thoughts on that because it can go either way. Both Joyce and Zappa said all times are happening now. It's called all at onceness.
Mm-hmm,
And,
mm-hmm.
what is Ellman touching on there for you? Learning to be Joyce's contemporaries, like to time travel, to be back in his time, or to know that being a Joyce contemporary means that all times are happening now, or something else.
I mean, for me, like, the idea or the notion of being a Joyce contemporary,
Yeah,
it's grounding for me.
yeah,
And I say this to, I'll say this to anybody who's like going through stuff, and touching on religion. I mean, one of the things I read once in a prayer was, God is what exists beyond the borders of our minds. you
yeah,
know So if you're ever at a point where you've like left the borders of your mind and you need something to ground you, you know, and I guess for me, like, yeah, it's James Joyce. It's for me, classic literature. It's stuff that it's happened before. You know, people have thought about it. People have written about it. Like, and that's grounding to me. It's like I don't have to feel like everything's crazy. Yeah, even when it is crazy, it's like, you know.
No, I agree. It's very sane. I mean, in the long run, you attend a Finnegan's Wake reading club and you notice it's normal. It's not crazy or like, oh, this is unreadable or jibber jabber, you know,
No. When I mean crazy, I mean like if you like, you know what I mean? Like you've like gone somewhere that there's nobody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't
In,
think like Finnegan's Wake isn't crazy.
no, you mean insanity? You mean like, well, that's McLuhan said you can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital. But you know, you brought up God there, and it's like funny because McLuhan reworded Joyce's line. Joyce said, I'm applied Aquinas. So that caused McLuhan to say, I'm applied Joyce. What do
That's
you
cool,
think?
man.
What do you think Joyce was meaning by saying I'm applied Aquinas?
Well, okay, so I don't, like I said, and I'm really, people who are raised Jesuit, Catholic, and they understand who all these people are.
Yeah.
My guess is that when Joyce was raised Jesuit, and you know, we know he was very schooled, he was really smart. I'm guessing Aquinas, what was he? Some kind of like philosopher or monk or Jesuit priest or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe Joyce took his ideas and liked his ideas and said, I'll apply them.
Yeah. Well, this is funny because I'm curious, Colin, you've been studying the wake. How much percentage do you think McLuhan got? I mean, excuse me, that Joyce got the wake, and how much percentage do you get the wake? I know it's a stupid question, but just your
No.
guess or hunch from
Yeah,
zero to 100%. How much did Joyce get his own book?
yeah. And I will say, you know, shout out that Fleet's back up,
Yeah.
right? So Joyce, I think like when I think about creating something like a work, I think he definitely got it. And I think he had a lot of fun. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, if you've done like going back to art and oil painting, you know, you're gonna make a painting like you're gonna have the composition in your mind, you're gonna do the painting, you're gonna enjoy it, you're gonna have fun. You don't have to like, somebody doesn't have to say, oh, you know, every single brush stroke, you know,
Right.
every single, it's like, no, he just, I think he just did it. So yeah, it's his creation, 100%. It's him.
How much
Yeah, me.
how much percentage do you get the wake?
I'm like less than 10%, dude. I mean,
I would
I have my own ideas
I
that I'm
know, but I
working.
disagree because anybody who is involved in a wake reading group is getting it at least 50 to 80% because they're participating in it. They're
Yeah,
the
yeah.
they're the co-creator, you know.
Well, here's the thing, like, because I'll get excited. I'll like read stuff and I brought up Wheat, but I'll be like, oh, I just had this. This is what this means. And I'll
Yeah.
send a message and then they'll come back and say, nah. All right.
No, I mean some people are too literal. That's the the flipped out thing is McLuhan said all words are metaphorical. So what is literal a metaphor for?
Yeah.
But here's a two-part question, Colin, because I'm curious. McLuhan, you touch on this. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Like knife and fork extends our teeth, the shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. And even non-tangible, say philosophy or religions, might extend consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? You know, your work, you have to type out stuff or write things.
Yeah.
What does that extend for you? What humanness does the writing utensil extend?
Well, I think it's going back to I'm going to try to just think of it simplistically. If I have an energy and a passion and an idea, that actual manifestation that comes through is the regulation part.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's good. It
yeah.
extends energy, passion, and ideas. So what do you think is same with Joyce? Was he extending through his pen what humanness? Same or something different?
Yeah, I think he just had this, like, it's like I said, like we were talking, the way I look at it, I just imagine this, like we said, like wound up so tight, and then to leave that and go to Paris in France, maybe you could almost argue like an opposite society, right? Like similar today, like people might say, oh, Western civilization's messed up. We need civilization to be more rigid and determinative. But for him to be wound up by this rigid society and then let loose and experience humanness, like, yeah, his writing was that regulation. Like he had to express it.
That's good. You evoked a great joke. They asked Gandhi, "What do you think of Western civilization?" He said, "Good idea." But this is why. Yeah, I mean, this is where McLuhan learned a lot from Joyce. In Portrait, he says, "I will try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can, using for my defense the only arms." There's he's extending his humanness, using for my defense the only arms I allow myself to use: silence, exile, and cunning. What's your take on those three words? What does he mean by silence, exile, and cunning?
Well, so Jerry, I just got to tell you what's in my head,
Please do. That's what I'm after.
I've been on this thing about the I'm like really fascinated by the salmon of knowledge, man. And when I hear that silence, exile, and cunning, I just picture a baby salmon, dude. I picture a baby salmon like being born in this silence, and the exile of leaving the river and the cunning to come back to its home.
Yeah.
I'm not, Joyce probably, I don't think Joyce was thinking about the salmon. But
Oh, no, that was good. That was good, Colin. Do you ever read that New York Times article? The guy says the Finnegan's Wake's all about salmon.
No.
Oh my God. I was like, oh, Colin must be referring to that. No, there's a guy who claims the whole wake is about salmon and fish.
That's what I've been thinking lately, dude.
Yeah. But this is another writer, Milan Kundera, in Unbearable Likeness of Being. He says, this is why I love writing, because the character I'm writing about can go further than I can. Well, how can that be? That sounds romantic and poetic, but if you take a piece of paper and a pencil and write down a character, how can it go further than the creator of it?
Yeah, I think I read that book too. I think maybe it comes from a position of like a lot of us, me, maybe a lot of people, where you don't feel as free as you can be. So yeah, maybe that's the idea.
And you're saying that the author frees you of that restrictions, or the reader is freed by the author? You don't know as free as you can be. Like, is that in regards to the reader or the author?
No, like if you're saying the author, and maybe it goes back to our whole discussion about art and expression and why people do it. I mean, if their reality is that they can't express themselves, they could turn to art, music, poetry. So if that character in a book that somebody's writing, they can have that person go further than they could go.
It frees them. Yeah.
It frees them.
It frees the author or the maker.
Yeah.
So what do you think the motive of the cave artist was?
I think the cave artist. It could have been just the fact that they could do it. They figured out how to make a mark on a wall, and then
Well, two of my film heroes have these mantras: ignore yourself, there's no self-expression. Cecil Taylor, the great jazz pianist, said, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, environments, and cultures are dominant?
Say that once more, please.
Is Joyce more a vehicle for his environment, or is he doing self-expression? It's basically,
I think self-expression.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
I think it can be like, you can balance it. You can temper the ego. I think you can temper the ego, but I think you have to take those energies, so I think with the ego, with purpose, you could temper that, so if you try to keep it in check. But it's like, well, hey, I'll tell you a story.
Please.
So recently, speaking of salmon, I had this stuff called salmon gravlax. And you don't actually, have you heard of it before?
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So I was able to help prepare it. And you basically you just mix salt and sugar, and you put it like in a dish, right? Like a pan. And then we put the salmon on top of it, and put some seasoning. And then you basically encased it with salt and sugar. And you don't even bake it. You just throw it in the fridge for like a day, right? So it's kind of like sushi, but the the salt cooks it, right? And when I was going to eat it, I thought, oh, this is going to taste all like salty, right? Like, wow, this is probably like the old days when they used to salt food.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, it didn't. It was just delicious. And I dawned on me, I mean, I'm not a culinary artist, but I thought, I bet the salt and the sugar like balanced each other, you
That's
know?
it.
And that's
Amazing.
what I'm thinking about with like the ego and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Self-expression and vehicle. That's good. What's more important, Colin, conviction or compromise?
Well, probably I'm a natural compromiser. So I think for me, I think it's important for me to have conviction because I'm not too good at it. So I think like I try to, yeah. So that's for me.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements, luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role, second and third?
I think ambition played the biggest role for me.
Top. Wow. What's second?
Uh, well, I think, well, I'd like to say skill.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of like getting hung up on luck. I don't, luck's weird. Luck's a weird thing, I think, because, yeah, I don't know.
No, that's good. T.S. Eliot said poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in? Your inner voice.
Yeah, it's a lot of storytelling, you know.
Good. I like that. I rarely get that.
Yeah.
Colin, is perception reality?
Um, it can feel like it, but I don't think it has to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely can feel like it, you know. I've had perceptions that it's like, whoa, I was way off, but for me it really felt like that
Yeah,
was
I felt
reality.
it.
Yeah.
Tell me one major element of your Colinness, the who you are that stayed the same, and one major element that's changed.
All right. Uh Probably I do talk a lot. I do talk a lot. Um
That stayed the same. You mean your whole life?
yeah, I tend to be a talker. Yep.
What's one thing that's changed?
I think my self-awareness, you know, um yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Uh yeah, that's cool. I think that a weakness that turned into a strength. Well, this is going to sound kind of, might not sound like a weakness, but I think I generally would used to like always try to make people happy, you know?
Yeah, no, that's that you're trying to over and how'd you turn it into a strength?
I think that, you know, like learning to become aware of myself, like my own assertiveness. Like,
Yeah,
hey, I don't have to sacrifice myself always for other people.
yeah,
So, but still be helpful. So,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's like, when I think of, you meet people or you have friends and the things people need to work on. I'm like, well, I'm glad I don't have to work on like not beating up people or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't want to bring. So, what's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside? I mean, is it?
uh,
What do you've been married how many years?
25.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, 25 years, and your three daughters are how old?
26. No, wait. I'm sorry. 23, 20, and 17. Yeah.
So you got a lot of female energy there. What's the
Yeah.
most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Um, I think like, I mean, this is obviously general because, you know, but I think that uh just working out feelings, talking about feelings, working it out. Um, there's that good, I just saw that good movie the other last month, The Room Next Door or something, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, these two women, and one of them was like end of life, and they just freaking like hashed it out. They like, you
Yeah.
know, just the anger and the everything, like, um,
No, that's good.
yeah.
So we touched on this earlier. What's the difference between art and science? I mean, in a way, as a mechanical engineer, you're in the science world, yet you balance it somehow by diving into Joyce.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, that's cool, man.
So
Yeah.
what's the difference between art and science?
So that's really interesting because when I was in high school, I was always good at like, the math and stuff came pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And I had teachers said, "Oh, you should go into engineering, this and that." And I was like, I don't want to be one of those guys in a, white shirt and a tie. Like you picture like the NASA control rooms and stuff. And but eventually, after a lot of stuff, I did go back for engineering, partly just because my brother-in-law, he's a very practical guy, and he just said, "Dude, I think you'll be able to get a better job probably." Yeah, you're probably right. But anyways, one of the things that was there was other turning points, but I read this cool book called The Existential Pleasures of Engineering, and it really touched on exactly what I experienced. And the guy was like, he basically talked about the 20th century, what happened to science and engineering and why it got such a bad rap. And he goes, look, it freaking got used for war, and then you had the atomic bomb, which that's no good. And then you had the freaking space race. And he's like, we lost that creativity that's can be part of engineering and science.
Yeah.
So that really clicked for me. And also what I started to think about was the idea that really the science, engineering, the math, it's another language to explain stuff, to describe what's going on. But yeah, it's so I think what you were asking was the difference between art and science, right?
Yeah.
uh so I mean, to then furthermore, I'm thinking to like my oldest daughter, she did like drama in high school.
Yeah.
And that was about the time I told you well, actually, it was partly because of her. And also that show. It's okay to bring up cultural references, right?
Sure.
That show, Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
Like I'm at work and your coworkers are talking about stuff and you want to be like, so I watched that show, And then I read some article that said it's like Shakespeare on motorcycles, right? And I'm like, holy smokes, it really is. Like it's like freaking Hamlet. The guy Clay, you know, they kill Jax's father, and then he
Yeah.
marries the woman.
Yeah.
And Jax is always on the roof reading his father's journal. It's like the ghost, you know. And I don't know, I'm like, that was really good writing. But my point is, so my daughter did drama in high school, and she was like, she could memorize all the lines, and she started hanging out with all the drama kids. And I was just blown away. I'm like, these kids are so freaking smart. You know, like
Wow.
I can't remember lines like that. But my point is, if you think of acting and drama as an art, like there's a science to it. There's a skill, you know, that's my point. Whether
Yeah.
it's painting or writing or music,
Yeah.
same with music. Like I'm not a, you know, I'm in awe at people who can play a good tune, you know?
Yeah. No, really good, Colin, because Jean Cocteau said art is science made clear. So we got about 15 more minutes. This has really been fun. A couple more and we're out of here. How do you find peace of mind?
Uh a lot of times for me it comes down to rest. You
Wow.
know, I think I just need to recharge and get some rest. Yeah. I
Nothing wrong,
mean, yeah.
nothing wrong with that, man. That's Pascal said all the problems in the world could be solved if you can just sit in a room in solitude. You know, calm down. So if you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Um what would I say? What would I say to my 12-year-old self? I don't know, I had a pretty I was I was pretty happy. I was pretty oblivious. Um you know, I think if anything, one of my regrets, it's not a huge, but it's like maybe try to touch base with my dad more, like talk to him more, you know.
Yeah. So these are 5 Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. Number 1, who started it all?
Yeah, I was reading about I like the idea that Lucy in the
Lucy started it.
yeah, the one they found in Ethiopia. Yeah.
Very good. 2, are we going to make it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
3, where do we put it?
Uh um Close by. Just put it close by.
4, who's cleaning it up?
I think we have to. We have to.
5, is it serious?
You know, it doesn't have to be. Like if anybody feels it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Good.
So yeah,
Very good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
over. Yeah. I over, yeah. Actually, you'd asked about engineering. My specific field is plumbing. I'm plumbing engineering.
There you go, because the patent for the toilet paper roll is 100 years old and it has it going over.
Yeah.
So talk about rules for the house. Utah Phillips says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Wait. Let me try it. Wait. Say it once more with the anarchy part.
Yeah, well, it's just a setup. He says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people.
Okay.
That's just a cute quote, but the
Yeah.
bottom line is just who's entitled to make the rules?
Who's entitled to make the rules? Who's entitled? I mean, you know, I'm like, it might be backwards, but I guess I'm thinking about raising kids and stuff. I tend to try to like include everybody to be a little entitled.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everybody should make the rules. Because here's the really hidden question, Colin, is the word freedom etymologically means the same thing, giving oneself one's own laws.
Yeah.
What does freedom mean to you now?
Can I tell you a quick story about the rules?
Please.
Because we would go back to California to visit, and I was so happy when my family grew out of the, like, we got to go to the theme parks and all that. They're like, we just want to chill at the beach. I'm like, awesome, this is great. Like, perfect. Get ice cream, get coffee, just go to the beach, walk. But we had one where my daughter was, she put on her bathing suit, and there was a whole, like, my wife's like, you're wearing that, and so I had the 3 daughters, and they're all like chiming in and talking about it. This is like rules, right? Rule making.
Yeah.
And I tried to just peep in. I was gonna say, like, hey, listen, she's comfortable with her body, like, let her. But all of them, they just all looked at me like, Dad, you stay out of it. So in that situation, I guess I was not entitled to make that.
Well, what does freedom mean to you now?
Freedom what does it mean to me now? I think, like, now, later, it's the freedom to look out for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Like, I'm not worried. My own freedom, whatever, dude.
Yeah. It's beautiful. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
Yeah, I like the idea of, like, Ruslan or Vaucluse. Like, they got the ochre mines over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, like, out of some, like, stone.
And where do you want it displayed?
Yeah, like, these are I had a connection that I read, like a lot of Joyceans. I think we touch on Beckett.
Yes.
And just like Waiting for Godot and stuff. But I read this book called Village in the Vaucluse. And it's a sociology book about this Harvard professor who went to live in that region of France where Beckett exiled.
Yeah.
And so it's called Village in the Vaucluse, but there's a few places around there. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Saint Geron le Puy, that's where the Joyce Museum is. There's a Joyce Museum there.
Oh, how cool. I didn't know that. Thank you.
That was the one of the last places he was before he died. Yeah.
What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
You know what? I'm really the cultural shift that inspires me. Well, it's a lot of it's my kids. They're the ones who I pick up what's going on. And my oldest daughter is, like, extremely articulate, and I just love, like, asking her, like, why is this, and she just says it how it is, and I'm like, wow, that's a really cool perspective. Like, I never thought of that.
That's good.
So, yeah.
That's good, Colin. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
A question that, I mean, I have a lot of resolution, dude. I have a lot of I had some questions, but right now, I think it's just it's just me figuring out how to take better care of myself, health wise, like balancing life. That's like an ongoing thing.
That's a good question. How can I take better care of myself? That's self-care, man. That's really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Colin, how has studying Joyce, reading Joyce shaped your behavior?
Well, it's made a really big impact on me. It's shaped my behavior because it's kind of like it kind of tempers my anxieties that
Yeah.
I used to have. I mean, Leopold Bloom's, he's a little whacked, but it's like he's a person, he's normal, and I'm like, okay, I could relate to him, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like the fact that Joyce expressed this from 100 years ago. It's like, okay, humans have gone through this.
Yeah.
So back in the day when I was first exposed to it, I didn't have that, it's kind of like you and I brought up that idea of the cyclotron where you have these, or you'll hear about commercials, it's almost like I've heard the idea that some of the media we consume is purposefully anxiety inducing, so then that when the anxiety is resolved, I could say, you need a highlighter, and you're like, oh yeah, dude, I need a highlighter.
I need a highlighter. I like that. Colin, it's really been fun. I got a couple more and we're out of here. This is Thornton Wilder. The guy who wrote Our Town. He was actually a Joycean. There's a book. If you don't have it, you should catch it. It's a book about this thick of all his letters about Finnegan's Wake.
Nice.
Thornton Wilder said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
What's it about for me? What is it about for me? I think just trying to stay cool, trying to stay trying to take on my life experience, and shape it into something meaningful.
Yeah.
At the same time, not go against myself.
Yeah. It's good, Colin. What gives you the most optimism?
I think for me, it's people. It's putting myself in a situation with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing because the first question I ask is, what is the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said exactly what you just said. Other people.
Yeah.
The last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said the same thing. Other people.
Nice.
So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Colin. Thank you so much for your time and energy, man.
Yeah, you too, Jerry. Right on.
And I will see you out there in the Finnegan's Wake Reading Club world. It's really an exciting living organism to share Joyce with other people, reading it out loud.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm gonna hit the end broadcast button now, but I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, dude. I love you.
All right, back at you.